This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 13th of December 2019 and I am 2J.
I am Tuam.
And I am GK, and I hope you had a good Jamhuri Day.
Yeah, absolutely.
These are the headlines in case you missed them. In the Star, Kenyatta attacks Mutula, Murkomen for defending Sonko. Daily Nation, we are returning river to its course. And in the Standard, the BBI riddle. Very interesting.
So I guess all related to the speech
Yes, so
made yesterday.
So two of them, the Daily Nation and the Star, we can sort of take together.
Yeah.
Basically, he gave a very compelling speech yesterday.
Yeah.
Almost as if he had written it
Himself.
Very touching.
It was a good speech.
Yeah.
Very, very good speech. But I had an issue.
But before you say you had issues with it, let's perhaps give some highlights.
Yeah, exactly.
So part of it was speaking about the splendor of independence Kenya.
Yes.
And how we need to return back to that inspiration.
Yeah.
Yes.
The things that inspired us as a republic.
Yeah.
And he went on to speak about putting Kenya Kwanza, Leo, Kesho, na Milele.
Yes.
And that was a mantra through the whole thing.
Yes.
One of the highlights was the housing funding levy.
Is now voluntary.
It's now voluntary.
Voluntary.
It's not
Amen.
meant. So this is one of the things he's gone back on after being quite adamant. I
Yes.
think there was a lot of protest about that.
Yes.
He's also asked KRA to see how they can structure and reduce the tax burden for
Yes.
SMEs.
Yes. Which is good.
Which is fantastic because KRA has gone rogue.
Yes.
For lack
Very
of a better...
true. Yeah, they're really
You know,
searching for every penny.
Exactly.
Prof was telling us a story
Yes.
that allow me to repeat it. That Kerry is this baby. This baby that
Naked baby.
that bolts out of the house and runs into the street, and the mother is following them with a towel and saying, "Oh baby, why don't run out when you're naked?" And the baby is running out, going past other people's houses and displaying
But
his
the problem
nakedness.
is that the parent is kind of amused
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
what the baby is
Yeah.
doing.
Yes, and I think
doing.
it's Boro's tactics going out there, sort of very aggressively trying to get or to raise the tax
revenue.
Tax revenue.
But however, it has been quite controversial and
Very
it's
much
targeted
so.
certain corporates.
Yeah.
And basically, we're trying to find some middle ground so
Yes.
that there's spurring of economic growth as well as tax.
Yeah.
being
But my
collected.
question is, so lots of great things came out of this speech.
Yes.
Yet Kenyans were really focusing on one thing.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
That single thing being the conflict of interest.
Yes, and this is now where the Star comes in with attacking
All right.
Mutula and Murkomen for defending Sonko during his court case.
You see, guys, and I'm going to say this at the risk of sounding extreme.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
If someone else made this speech other than President Uhuru Kenyatta, I would have given this speech 9 out of 10.
Okay.
But because Uhuru Kenyatta is the one that made this speech, and said conflict of interest, and what the president was saying is actually the senators showing up in court to defend Sonko should not have happened.
Yes.
And I agree with him. But the only reason I don't agree with him is because he's the one who made that speech saying conflict of interest. And that is because...
And I think that's
It's
what
the
Kenyans
pots-
were.
Yes.
Calling
The kettle black.
Yes, because let's be honest, Stawi, right? Government programs
It's called
to fund.
Stawisha SME Mashinani.
Yes, who is part of the banks that do it? Who are the the kids in national schools that actually take milk? Who are they taking milk from? The people where government holds conferences, where are they holding conferences in? So I think.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is that maybe President Kenyatta didn't think through that specific pronouncement, because I think it could come back to bite him.
When you say that the Attorney General should create a law that should be passed in cabinet and then go later to Parliament, or the conflict of interest law, it could actually come back to bite him.
Yeah.
I have no problem with him doing business with government, no problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
But please, don't say that one is doing that conflict of interest. Well, you yourself.
I know, and I think that's what angered a lot of Kenyans.
Yes.
You know?
Tough words from the table today.
Yeah, I know.
Someone has to say it.
However, I think one interesting thing, the point that Prof was making, is that as Kenyatta was making this speech, I think a lot of Kenyans didn't understand what he was saying. So he's talking about a lot of progress and projects that are happening, but Kenyans couldn't understand it because they don't know where they are happening.
Yeah, so basically, how can these speeches start to mean more for the people?
Exactly.
Because it's
Absolutely.
easy to be told how much has been tarmacked,
Yes.
how much electricity is, but if you're not seeing in your immediate environment those improvements, it's very difficult. But maybe as Kenyans, we need to just open our eyes somewhat.
Let me tell you.
And give credit where it's
Let me tell you, of all regimes in this country,
yeah.
the man who has built the most roads, connected the most houses to electricity, built the most infrastructure is Uhuru Kenyatta. That is on record.
Yes.
That is on record. The only thing I had a problem with is conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And in other news, unity was a very major theme. So I think he's building on his...
The returning the river
to its course.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
And I think it also comes from a Kikuyu proverb.
Yes.
I won't attempt to say it.
Washokia Rui.
Mukaro. Anyway, we do have a 3-part criteria that we use to break down the headlines. We ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And lastly, is it thoughtful or just plain lazy?
I say we just toss the star immediately. They're so wordy and long and...
Yes, but good food for thought because conflict of interest was a big...
But interesting up here, Maraga didn't show up. So he really is making good on his claim.
And I like the picture.
You people didn't want to announce him at the last state function. So
yeah, just give him his S500. Give him his S500. He'll show up.
Let's put Daily Nation in the parking bay because I like it. Good.
Yes.
And then in the Standard, the BBI riddle.
Yes.
So it seems like debate has since died down.
Yes.
We had this launch that had high expectations, seemed to fall flat on its face.
However, they did make reference to some of the conversations that we have been having.
Yes.
The possibilities that it might be fake.
Yes.
There's BBI 1 and BBI 2.
Let me put it this way. And you said it very well.
Yeah.
Debate has died down.
Yeah.
And you know why it has died down? It's because what BBI at Bomas was a decoy document. It was a lie. What is actually going to happen is if the president has extended the term, Kenyans should wait for BBI 2.
Wait, his own term?
No. The
the
term
BBI
of the task force.
The task force.
Hey.
Sorry. If the president has extended the term of the BBI task force,
what are they doing, right? They must be working on something.
So they are going to look for other opinions of Kenyans. But you see, what is going to happen is BBI report 2 is going to be very different from BBI 1.
Yeah.
And Prof has this thing that before they launched it at Bomas, a lot of the stuff and the parts that was presented at BBI 1 was actually expunged and presented and put into BBI 2, which is going to be launched on a later date.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we await.
We wait here for BBI 2.
Yes.
The riddle continues.
I think it's between the two. Great headline. However, I really like the Daily Nation because I think it's positive.
And it's topical.
Yeah. And I think if we are, going to return to this new course, it's a great deal.
All right.
Oh gosh.
You can win.
There you have it. Daily Nation gives us winning headlines. Onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a 3-part criteria that we use. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
And here you have Ozone, caricature of the county assembly majority leader of Nairobi, Beatrice Elachi. And next to her is a trash can. And next to the trash can is actually a toilet. Next to the trash can is Mike Sonko. And the caption there is heir apparent.
Yeah.
Now, two observers yesterday, when Beatrice Elachi showed up at Nyayo Stadium, she showed up in a car that had the flag of Nairobi County government. I don't know whether she assumed she was governor. But what is she's actually playing for Sonko. So
yeah.
And I don't like this cartoon because
I don't like it either.
It's showing a lot of mud.
Is this supposed to be near Nairobi?
And then saying city, is it City Hall or City Hall?
City Hall.
City Hall. That is City Hall.
That's what she's inherited.
That's the pun.
Yeah.
Look, I think people are being a bit unfair on Sonko. I have never seen Nairobi this clean myself.
You know you're pro Sonko.
Completely. All right, we'll put in the parking bay since you like it so much.
So we have Gado.
Gado is showing us a parade. It's drawing of his people that are fat cats, wolves, no faces, ostriches, vultures, and pigs. And next to them are marching generals. And I think he's trying to show us yesterday, it was Jamhuri Day.
Yeah.
And what normally happens is soldiers march past the dignitaries. And the dignitaries in this case are shadowy faces, vultures, pigs, fat cats, And by the way, military generals don't actually march past people. It's
So
actually soldiers.
Got it wrong.
It's got it wrong.
I think it's a bit of a dull cartoon. I think it's negative.
Yeah, I think it's negative.
Yeah, Gado's gone for Christmas, right?
I think it's going for Christmas.
Yeah, but he also needs some Christmas spirit.
Exactly, the
Some
positivity. Can we please just toss this?
Should have put Santa here.
Daily Nation.
Daily Nation.
This one was good.
This is good. And this is a caricature of former Senator Johnston Muthama. And next to him is a Catholic priest. And next to him is Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka. And he's been slapped. Is he been slapped?
He's not being slapped. Ruto seems to be trying to capture him.
To capture him, but he's
Then now
missing.
he's
dodging.
He's ducking, eh?
Yeah.
And the caption there is, who gives out this running mate to the Hustler Nation? And then Muthama says, I do.
And so Kalonzo looks like an unwilling bride in this case,
Yes.
being given away by Muthama.
You see, Kalonzo is playing a game here. He released a statement, I think yesterday, saying, "Oh,
Yeah, that-
I am with the president, or I'm not pro William Ruto and everything." Then the moment you deny a rumor, it means it's
the
the truth. You are being coaxed.
But do you expect any different from Kalonzo?
Of course not.
Yeah.
That's why he has that thing on his head.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can swing either way.
All right, I think
So who
between...
gives us our winning cartoon?
I think the star, just toss it.
Okay,
The star?
there we go.
Mhm.
Dula gives us
This is the nation, you mean?
Sorry, I said we toss the star. We
Oh.
like the Daily
Oh,
Nation.
fantastic.
Are you done?
We're done.
Okay, Dula gives us our winning cartoon. What is our final thought?
And now our final thought, it is inspired by the decade in review in Africa.
Yeah.
But before we go, can we do a summary?
Absolutely.
I'll do a summary.
Yeah.
So this week we've been looking at the highlights of the decade. On Monday we began with the Arab Spring.
Yes.
And here we looked at movements that destabilized a whole region. We looked at parts of North Africa as well. We looked at a book called A Rage for Order, The Middle East in Turmoil, From Tahrir Square to ISIS, by Robert F. Worth, where we saw how brutal regimes were either replaced by even more brutal regimes, or existing regimes became even harsher or gave way to political chaos.
Yes.
On Tuesday, we looked at possibly the biggest leak in our time, or whistleblower in history,
Yes.
through a book called WikiLeaks, Inside Julian Assange's War on Secrecy,
Yeah.
by David Lee and Luke Harding.
Yes.
And we saw how WikiLeaks had its humble beginnings in Nairobi with the Kroll report.
Yeah.
And here we debated whether information that has been leaked through the platform has been useful to society, and got us thinking on how transparent governments should be. Are we the citizenry ready to know everything?
Yes.
On Wednesday, we looked at the rise of China versus the logic of strategy by Edward Luttwak. Here we proposed that a nation's strategic outlook will eventually dominate its economic and political future. He proposed that China would be in decline.
Yeah.
And however, you guys sort of came out and proved him wrong.
Yes.
And yesterday was Jamhuri Day.
Yes.
So we reflected at Kenya being 56.
Yes.
And today now we look at some of the African
highlights in the decade.
Yes.
So I think I'll just start with looking at like demographics and population.
Yeah.
So at the start of the decade, 2010, Africa's population had just hit 1 billion at that moment.
Yeah.
And so 10 years later, as we approach 2020, we are at about 1.3 billion and growing, with projections that will be 1.7 billion in the next 10 years, so by the end of the next decade, and 2 billion by the decade thereafter, 2040. So Africa, as we all know, is the youngest continent on Earth, with an average age of 19.4 years.
Wow.
So we're saying that we have 1.3 billion people who average the age of 19.4 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
In Uganda, the average age is 15 years.
Yes.
Same as Niger, which is 15.
Yeah.
Mali and DRC are 16 years.
Yes.
It's incredible.
Yeah, especially
So-
when you think of how Japan and other countries are aging.
Exactly, aging rapidly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we saw this decade was a complete shift that found the share of the working age population being larger than the share of the non-working age population. And this is what they called a demographic dividend or a demographic gift.
Yes.
So theoretically, what should happen is that countries should harness this dividend, this gift, and see higher incomes, better quality of life, smaller families, just a lot of increases and good things happening. But this can only be done if governments recognize the benefits of a young workforce and also provide jobs for them to have a thriving economy.
Yeah.
So the aging populations, like you said, of Europe, China, Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan.
Yeah.
In South Korea, the average age is 41 years old.
Wow.
So what the problem they're having now is
Wow.
that they're having a larger share of a non-working workforce. Yeah.
Population.
Especially China. So you're having these countries, they're becoming very expensive for manufacturers to operate in.
Yes.
And so we need to see Africa really tapping
Yes.
into that. I
Yeah.
see Ethiopia is doing a lot of that.
Yes.
The big four with manufacturing could be a big way to get into that.
Yeah.
But the challenge for the next 10 years will be figuring out exactly how to make that transition. So I think in the past 10 years, we've seen this demographic dividend happening.
Yeah.
But in the next 10 years, how do we harness that gift so that we can have more jobs? Because right now in
Beautiful.
Kenya, for example, we have this jobless growth,
Yes.
where the economy is growing, but
there are no jobs.
unemployment is rising.
It's
Yes.
because they're doing jobs that sort of don't fit the current structure
Yeah,
of
trends,
the economy.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
we
And I
need to
think
start thinking about that.
We talked about that earlier this year, that we need to have more engineers, more doctors, more people who can do actual stuff that can benefit the economy.
Probably even more services.
Oh, yeah, of course, you love the services.
Less
I love
journalism.
services.
Less journalism. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
So I looked at politics and some of the highlights.
Yeah.
So since 2010, Africa has experienced a total of 6 coups in Niger, Egypt, Mali, Zimbabwe, Sudan, Guinea-Bissau,
Yes.
and 2 attempted coups in Gabon and Amara.
Yes.
It's a place called Amara.
where's Amara?
Somewhere in Eritrea. I don't know. I don't want to be wrong.
Amara.
And of the 49 leaders in power
Yeah.
in Sub-Sahara at the beginning of 2015, only 22 remain in power as of May 2019.
Yeah.
So we're seeing sort of some dynamism in democracy.
Yeah.
These transitions are happening more and more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since 2015, the region has experienced 26 transfers of power, and whether this means relinquishing power through a coup
Yeah.
or to a successor
Yeah.
or an opposition candidate defeat,
Yeah.
these things are happening. So
Yeah.
democracy is alive
And
and
well.
kicking in whatever form that we
Yeah, the
find
West,
it
the
in.
West would have us believe otherwise.
Exactly. They would think that
Too many dictators. yeah.
Exactly. So one of the highlights was actually the ousting of Omar al-Bashir. After 30 years of rule in Sudan,
Yeah.
he was forced out by the military,
Yes.
who took over for a short period.
Yeah.
And then there was a thing called the
Partition,
Khartoum
yeah.
massacre.
Yeah.
So all these killings happened, but then there was a real pressure from the AU as well, who said, if you don't create a civilian government,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we will withdraw you from the AU.
Yes.
So there's this pressure. And so we see now Sudan, a budding nation,
Yeah.
under
Yeah.
civilian rule, abolishing a lot of strongly Islam, you
Yeah.
know,
Yes.
The moral
legislation.
laws, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we had Zimbabwe, which was really interesting.
Yes.
Yes.
Because Zimbabwe, in many ways, wasn't regarded as a coup, but it was a coup.
Yeah.
Yes.
A military,
military
coup,
coup.
nonetheless.
Bloodless.
Because Edward Mnangagwa,
Mana?
Mnangagwa. Mnangagwa.
or the crocodile,
The crocodile.
or ED,
Tim Lacoste.
is actually from military intelligence.
Yes.
Yeah? So some say that he is fearful that he also may be usurped,
Yes.
that a military
Favor
could
for,
take
yeah.
over, right?
Yeah.
And what Zimbabwe seemed to have done is to have a situation where the military can somehow check the executive. So we have a situation where Mnangagwa, the crocodile,
Let's say
was
Emerson.
was the president, vice president, sorry.
Yes.
Then he was sacked.
Yeah.
Then he comes together with the military.
Yes.
And they surround
Yes.
Mugabe's house.
Yes.
They put him under house arrest.
Yes.
And they do this almost like out of a coup d'etat manual.
Yeah.
So the Zimbabwean Defense Force take over the state broadcaster.
Yeah.
And then they are at pains to explain to the public that this is not a coup. We're just, you know, we're trying to put in...
It's a change of guard.
Yeah, we're trying to quell the tensions following the sacking of the VP. All the while, the VP is actually behind
Yes.
all this with the military. So they came together, and now Emerson is the current president.
Yeah.
Yes.
He seems shaky.
Yes.
And I think he's borrowing from the Egypt situation. So in Egypt, as we discussed on Monday, we had Morsi take over with
Yes.
the Muslim Brotherhood. So
Yes.
the Muslim Brotherhood and the military come together to
Yeah.
overthrow
Yes.
Hosni Mubarak.
Yes.
But then Morsi is quickly overthrown
Yes,
by
by-
Sisi, who's a general in the army.
Absolutely.
So you have the military here taking some precedent over
Yes.
matters.
Yeah.
And maybe Zimbabwe is fearful
That might
of
happen.
the very same thing.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah.
history teaches us.
Yeah.
Kagame wasn't intelligent.
Yes.
Who else was there?
Putin.
Putin.
We have Salva Kiir, and
Yes.
these people are still presidents.
Yes.
And they probably do it because they're very coy. They keep their mouth shut.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're seeing but not talking.
Yes.
And so maybe Emerson has
Nothing to worry
a
about.
long
Yeah.
presidency.
For as long as you're head of intelligence
Yeah.
in an African country
Yeah.
or in the eastern part of the world,
You'll
which is
thrive.
You'll
Russia,
thrive.
you are going to stick to power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's because you know the intricacies of power.
Exactly, and Emerson actually has tried to legitimize
Yes.
his rise to power
Yeah.
through the election.
Yes.
And I'm sure they'll continue to do
Yes.
those kinds
Yeah.
of things to make sure that he
You've given
legitimate.
up saying Nanangwa.
I have given up
Say
completely.
one more time.
Mnangagwa. And also we have interesting African leaders. We have Madagascar has a
DJ.
a DJ for a president.
Yes.
And he's also one of the youngest. I think he
Yes.
came to power at the age of 34.
Yes.
His name is
Wow.
Andre
Rajoelina.
Rajoelina.
Impressive.
Yes.
So that one I cannot say.
It's been a good decade, I think,
For democracy in Africa.
Some would say there's been a rise in populism. We question whether that has happened.
That's true.
Yeah. I was looking at what does China mean for Africa in the last decade. Now, in the last decade, there is this initiative that is called China Belt and Road Initiative. Right? It started in 2013. And time project is 2049. That is 100 years to when China will be the 100th anniversary of the People's Republic of China.
Wow.
But before that, 2000 and 2017, China has actually invested $148 billion into African countries.
Wow.
All right. Now, guys, before that, African countries relied on the Bretton Woods institutions. That's the IMF, the World Bank, the Paris Club, and all that. But it was all donor. It's aid and all manner of things. But when China comes through, they actually come through with a win-win situation. They say, we want your resources. We are being honest. But at the same time, because we know that infrastructure is the bloodline of
that
countries,
extraction,
all right, and by the way, it's not just for the extraction of those countries; it's also for the prosperity of African nations, right? So I was looking at some statistics that IMF, 20 countries in Africa actually owe the IMF a tune of about $15.4 billion US. China in itself has given loans to African countries worth $148 billion. What is the difference? If you're going to take a picture from space of African countries and say, chap, 2000, chuck 2017 or 2018 or 2019, Africa looks very different. And that is primarily because of Chinese infrastructure.
We always say that China did more for Africa in 10 years than the West did for us in 200.
Absolutely. Guys, let me tell you, see, it's a relationship between a patronizing partner. And you have this partner that says, I have some benefit for myself, but what I can build for you is also benefit to myself. And you see, I was looking at some stats as well. Africa by 2025 will be a $2.1 trillion economy. China is a $25 trillion economy. If you do that, I mean, Africa will probably be 12 times less than China. That is a hell lot of difference. That's a hell lot of difference. However, they are seeing opportunities because they are coming for our resources, which will support their people. And by the way, their market supports, the biggest market for China is their own people. But for them to survive, they need to go into other countries. But what I should also say as well, why are Africans, or why is the West telling Africans that China is bad for you? The Belt and the Road Initiative is targeted at 152 countries across the world, Asia, Europe, Africa, the Americas. In fact, there's actually a train running all the way from China to England, all right? I have not seen the West complaining about an SGR from China to England, but they complain and tell us, oh,
that SGR
you're taking too many loans. There is no way we are going to survive without an SGR. And if for those Kenyans that blame Uhuru Kenyatta for saying it is...
You're going on a rant now?
Yes, I am going to tell them, you are thick. And you are thick because if we don't upgrade our infrastructure, if we don't build our infrastructure from Mombasa to Banana in the DRC, if we don't build our infrastructure from Djibouti to Addis Ababa, if you're not going to build your infrastructure from Dar es Salaam all the way to Burundi, to Kigali and to DRC, then you'll be forever borrowing those donors that give you $20 million US from the amount of diamonds that they have taken from you.
Okay, 2M.
Amen. Amen, I guess. So on a day where we had a winning headline from the Daily Nation and a winning party from the Daily Nation, I want to leave you with this. Looking at the past decade, it is undeniable that Africa is on the rise. And Africa is the place to be, as 2M has rightly pointed out.
Yes.
The president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Adesina, urged us to change the lens with which we look at Africa. He said from the traditional development mindset to an investment mindset. African economies are in fact doing better than the global average and have been doing better over the past 10 years. So be proud to be African. in, invest in Africa, and have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Find us on TV. We're on GoTV, Pang Free to Air, and StarTimes.